وَقُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا صَدَقَ اللَّهُ الْعَظِيمُ. The part of the ayah of the Quran that I recited to you comes from Surah Taha. This is the dua of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that has been taught personally by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the statement that, O Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you must say, قُل, you must say, Rabbi zidni ilma. What exactly does that mean? Knowledge is vast. We do not know how big the knowledge is. So the Prophet has been asked to ask Allah to increase me in knowledge. Not increase the knowledge for me. Knowledge is already vast. Increase me in knowledge. Make me a big enough container that I can contain as much knowledge as possible. Because knowledge, there is no limit. We don't know of any limit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that they ask you about ruh, soul, something that is part of all of us and all the living beings. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given us complete knowledge of what exactly is the soul. We have been told about what happens to the soul. We know about some things from the world of souls or from the world of barzakh, but we don't exactly understand what is a soul. People have done a lot of experiments on the human body and have studied human body, but nobody had an opportunity of studying the human soul to a level that you would call scientific. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أُوتِيتُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. We have given you knowledge, but what? Little. And the knowledge that you have, you constantly go in a circular fashion with that knowledge. Sometimes you come up with an idea and you research on that idea, you make a point, and 200 years down the road, somebody else comes up and say, you have been lied to from last 200 years. Whatever they found was a fake, false information. Now we bring you the truth. And then maybe down the road, somebody else may deny what we have been believing as a truth. So the ultimate truth lies with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has been told to make this dua because knowledge is the core of the beginning of the guidance. On the Day of Judgment, very knowledgeable disbelievers. Now this is a very, very ironical statement, because if you are a disbeliever, then you cannot be called a knowledgeable, because the one who didn't understand his creator is not knowledgeable. But let's, for the sake of argument, say knowledgeable disbelievers will come on the Day of Judgment and would say what? Oh, we wish we would have listened and would have used our heads. كُنَّا نَسْمَعْ أَوْ نَعْقِلْ. We wish we would have used our intelligence. Then we would not be standing here. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala weighs very heavily on being knowledgeable. And knowledge takes many forms. In the good old days, at the time of the companions of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Arabs' environment was very different than what we live in today. Back in those days, people believed in oral transmission of knowledge. Writing and reading was not common. Even those Arabs who could read or write, they would prefer to transmit orally, because that would be like spread like crazy, like go viral. Because if I want to share a news with somebody, I would rather go to the places where people from all over Arabia come, and I will tell them something. Maybe my latest poetry, maybe my latest story, maybe a big news. Now these people will go back all over Arabia, from Yemen to Syria, from Iraq all the way to Syria, down to Oman, all over. Everybody will know within a season. Not in a year, within a season. Then all of these main hit points had huge, massive ports, where people from China, people from India, people from Indonesia, people from Africa, they were coming to those ports and doing what? Trading. Or these Arabian merchants are going into those places, Rome, for example, or to Africa, or to India, to Malabar, to Maldives, to other places, to China, news is spreading. Within a very small amount of time, news was spread like fire. That was the social media back in those days. But Arabs, a small number of them, do knew how to read and write, but since they were reliant on oral transmission, their emphasis on memory was huge. That's why in the early days we find very less written work. It's mostly oral transmission. Later on, people started making writing, but that doesn't mean companions didn't write anything down. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiyallahu anhu, he had a written collection of ahadith that exceeded over 10,000. Sayyidina Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu didn't know how to read and write, but his students did. So his personal collection exceeded close to 5,400, a little bit more than that. Because these were the times when oral transmissions were heavily reliant on. But in the times to come, the collection of books were written by the students of the companions. And as the time grew, more work was done in terms of writing. And this is the time when things were not getting published. So now let's go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this reading and writing not just for humans. Angels have also been appointed to write our deeds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has appointed angels to write our deeds. So they also write. They have books. They have pens. And they can also read. And on the day of judgment, when people will be brought forth, people will be given their book of deeds. Doesn't matter they could literally read or write in this world. That is irrespective. That day they will read their book of deeds. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this knowledge so important that when Musa alayhi salam was asked a question, that how can we solve this murder mystery? Nobody knows who the killer of this noble man is, because the guy who killed him, who was his own nephew, went to the court and made a plea that I want this culprit to be caught who killed my my uncle. Now it becomes very difficult. So Musa alayhi salam said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered you to slaughter a cow. Take a little piece out of the cow and struck the dead. He will come back to life. He will tell you the name of the killer and will die again. And instead of working on that, the people said, oh Musa, are you kidding with us? أَتَّخِذُنَا هُزُوًا? And Musa alayhi salam's response was, I want to come in Allah's protection to be called an ignorant. So notice the words he say, that being an ignorant is not considered good in any times, in any society. So a believer has to be a very well-aware individual in many walks of life, in terms of religion, in terms of the worldly life.